Every election cycle, each campaign is defined by one book. In 1992, it was Joe Klein's book, Primary Colors, a fictional account of Bill Clinton, a small town or small southern state governor who runs for president and has trials, turmoils, and tribulations on the way there. In 2008, it was Game Change that was turned into an HBO movie. But both of those books came out after the campaign was completed. It's very rare that you have a book that defines a campaign before any votes are actually cast. Well, that's what's going on in this particular campaign, the 2016 presidential race. And Coulter's book, Adios America, defined the Republican primary and really defined the campaign as of now. I've never seen this happen before. Right now, we're very pleased to be welcomed in studio by Ann Coulter, author of the smash New York Times bestseller, Adios America.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you have any idea when you wrote this book that it would or could have the possibility of defining the entire presidential election, or at least the Republican primary?
Well, I hoped it would, but oh my gosh, I never thought it would be this magnificent. I mean, I knew, you knew, we all knew. Any presidential candidate who took up this issue and made the right arguments would soar in the polls, and that is exactly what has happened with Donald Trump. Look at the reaction to him, with the entire being beset by a blizzard of attacks, and mostly from his own party, who are obviously pretty heavily attacked in my book.
Explain the story as to how Donald got your book, because if you watch that opening speech when he announced that he was running for president, it's like reading the Cliff Notes version of Adios America. He clearly read the book. It clearly influenced what he thought about it. Tell that whole story. Yes,
well, I ought to say he was always good on immigration. The two of us spoke, I mean, I didn't run into him, but at the 2013 CPAC, it used to be the conservative Political Action Committee. Now it is the Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee. And everyone noticed, this was right after the 2012 election, and all of the immigration restrictionist groups were pointing out, you know, CPAC has all these panels. CPAC was run by Al Cardenas then, very close with Marco Rubio. So they'd have immigration panels, but every single speaker was pro-amnesty. It would be like Grover Norquist and Whit Ayers, and I think Marco Rubio himself was, you know, prominent speaker there. None of the immigration panels allowed an anti-immigration speaker, so afterwards everyone was commenting. Only two people spoke out against immigration at the entire CPAC. Ann Coulter and Donald Trump.
Mickey Kaus didn't make the list?
No, I snuck him in the next year when they were trying to shut me up by making me debate a liberal. And that was a good one. So he's been good on it. And then after I had the interview with Jorge Ramos a week before my book came out, because no liberals will interview me on this book to this day. It's now been on the bestsellers list for, what, like 3 months? 3 months without one iota of mainstream media attention, not even CNN, certainly not MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, although next week I will be on Tavis Smiley's PBS program.
Fantastic.
But that's the first one, basically, since, well, there was Jorge Ramos, and then the following week, Bill Maher. But I did the Jorge Ramos interview before the book came out, Finding a Mexican Doing a Job No American Will Do. Interview me on my book. It was all over the internet, and I think I was on my way to the airport after taping it, and I got an email from Trump's people saying he wanted a copy of the book, so we overnighted it to him. So yeah, he got it an advance copy per his request, but it's something he's always been interested in. Nobody talked about Mexican rape until Adios America came out. As you know, it's like reading forensic files on Law and Order. A lot of crime in my book.
It took so long for the mainstream media to make that connection to it. It was, I think, the Washington Post that finally acknowledged this is where Trump is getting his immigration papers.
Yeah, I think they knew right away. They claimed they knew right away. So, I mean, the guy from the Washington Post book review section emailed me and asked me about it. And I said, yeah, well, unlike the Washington Post book review, yes, Trump has read my book. And he said, no, I read it when it first came out. Well, where's the review? So he had read it when it first came out. He saw the connection, and I guess he was sort of torn. Does it help or hurt to associate and to say that Donald Trump has read this book? And I don't know, I guess they finally threw their hands up and said, well, it's true, we'll go with it.
Now, one of the things that you've been saying for quite some time now is that you predict that Mitt Romney will get back in the Republican race, who was very good on immigration issues, even when it was tough to be good in a blue state like Massachusetts.
Yes.
And tough to be tough on immigration in the general election last time around, but he held firm. there are new reports out right now saying that he could get back in the race with Donald Trump in the race still. Do you see that happening?
No, no. No, my idea was that we'd have to recruit Romney. And look, he's my only hope if something happens with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump isn't the nominee, look at the rest of them, John. No, we better beg for Romney to get back in. And as you know, in the last chapter of my book, I go through all the Republican presidential candidates, past and likely in the future. I didn't know Trump was going to run, so he wasn't included. But if you look at all of them, Mitt Romney has a 20-year record of being fantastic on immigration. As you say, in a blue state, unlike the rest of these guys, he vetoed in-state tuition for illegals. He vetoed health care for illegals. He said, you send me driver's licenses for illegals, I'm vetoing it, so they didn't send it to him. He struck a deal with the federal government to allow Massachusetts state troopers to arrest illegals. He was Jan Brewer before Jan Brewer was Jan Brewer. But, you know, a lot of people, unfortunately, as we find in our book, or in our professions, are followers, including people who are supposed to be leaders. And I think a lot of conservatives, including a lot of the ones you see talking on TV as if they're speaking for the Tea Party and like the Tea Party, lied to the Tea Party and called Mitt Romney a rhino establishment. Well, no, not on the single most important issue that will determine every other issue, immigration. Romney was great. He never backed down during the campaign. Now, what I think Donald Trump is showing is if he had talked about it a little more,
he could have won the election.
I think so.
But can we exploit this, though? Because clearly immigration is the issue this time around, and Republican voters have a litmus test.
Yes.
The Republican voters want the Republican nominee to be hawk on the issue. If they find Jesus now on immigration, if the other candidates look at Trump's poll numbers and they say, okay, I want to be there, I don't like being in the back of the pack, and we get Rubio to flip again for the 18th time, right. And we get Rand Paul to flip, and we get Ted Cruz to flip, that's a good thing for us, because if one of these guys ends up as the nominee, we have him behind the 8 ball.
Yes. Yes. Now, I don't trust any of the rest of them on it. Look at how reluctant they are to go to that, to the pro-American side, and look at for the reason behind it. I mean, Trump is really exposing these guys as not caring about the American people, caring only about their donors. Scott Walker, you know, after Trump comes out opposing anchor babies, and not backing down on calling them anchor babies.
I love that part of it, too.
I know. It's so wonderful to see what happens when Republicans aren't groveling and apologizing the moment someone yells at them. It turns out they don't have a plan B. There's no step, oh, I expected you to capitulate immediately. I don't know what to do now. So after Trump comes out against anchor babies, Scott Walker tried to be against anchor babies. But then one of his billionaire Republican donors said, no, I'm for anchor babies. And Scott Walker doesn't have a position on anchor babies now, refuses to talk about it. So Trump is really exposing them as not caring about American people, about, by and large, caring about their big donors. So I don't really trust them. Yet and still, I think immigration is going to be the next abortion issue. I mean, it's kind of annoying me, all these guys coming along acting like they're Ronald Reagan by taking the positions he had 30 years ago. The world was a different place then. It was kind of cool to be pro-life back then. Now every Republican running for president is pro-life. Once Giuliani, the hero of 9/11, got nowhere in a Republican presidential race by being pro-choice.
Pete Wilson, who's great on immigration,
right.
The same thing happened to him in 1996.
So it'll never happen again. And now they think they're being brave? No, you're taking what the brave position was 30 years ago. We have won, at least among Republicans. And by the way, how are you going to stop abortion if you can't win another national election? Well, we're not going to be able to unless we stop the Democrats dumping Democratic voters on the country through immigration.
And even the ones that we think are good on immigration really aren't that good. Ted Cruz is one who people think, all right, well, if Trump is out, he's probably the next best thing on immigration. Well, just a few years ago, he was against repealing birthright citizenship.
And for bringing in guest workers, yes. And worried about the ranchers and the employers and getting more and more cheap labor. Now, I do think Ted Cruz is smart enough that he can learn. I mean, I don't mind when people flip-flop to my position as long as they're going in the right direction, as long as it's believable. And I think Cruz could be convinced more than really any of the rest of them I can think of, other than Romney, who has been great for 20 years.
But as soon as they win the primary, then what power do we have over them? This is the time and place where we can make sure that they get, as Romney did in the primary last time around, that they box themselves in on the issue where they have no wiggle room.
Right.
If you give them any wiggle room at all, they're going to screw us.
No, that's right. And I do tend to think that Romney, well, for one thing, actually loved the country. I always like candidates, and I'm sure there's some people who are just have sad little lives being, in the Florida legislature, and then they get a patron and they make it to the U.S. Senate, and they really love the country. But, there's no real evidence of it. You look at somebody like Reagan, Romney, Trump, all of their lives are made worse by running for or winning the presidency.
It's ruined their lives.
Yes, it kind of makes me think they really love the country and they're doing this to help the country. It isn't just, well, this is the next thing I do because I'm a lifelong politician. And Romney never did waver on immigration, including when Rupert Murdoch sat down with him a month before the election. It was reported, and Murdoch was haranguing him. You have to stop this self-deportation, and Romney laughed at him.
Well, what evidence is there that Republicans lose elections because of being they're hawks on immigration?
No.
I go back to the 1994 gubernatorial campaign in California, which you write about in your book. Mm-hmm. Pete Wilson was supposed to get crushed by Kathleen Brown. Crushed.
Yeah.
And he won. And he won in places where traditionally Republicans don't even play well. Places like San Jose, places like Long Beach. Pete Wilson cleaned up.
Every county but San Francisco voted for Proposition, what was it?
187.
187.
Dave Bratt, too, just recently.
Right. How many of these victories do we need? No, it is a magnet for voters, but the Chamber of Commerce doesn't like it, and important media figures don't like it, and the big billionaire Republican donors don't like it, and Trump is exposing them. He's exposing the whole corrupt, awful operation. But these are people, there's one or two, but I think we may have capped out at two decent billionaires who love the country. Most of them, they're international globalists. They don't care about America. American citizenship means nothing to them. If this falls apart, they'll go someplace else. For most of us, our citizenship in this wonderful country and the existence of America is extremely important to us. Rich people just want to make their pile, and they don't care what happens to America. Boy, are we seeing that on immigration and seeing it with Donald Trump.
If Jeb is the nominee, should Trump run as a third-party candidate?
Yes.
How about Rubio?
Yes.
How about Walker?
It's not going to be Walker, but no. No, only those two, I would say, someone from my perspective, who cares if we get rid of the Export-Import Bank? The country is over. Rubio and Jeb, number one on their agenda is open borders, open borders, open borders, at least with Hillary, assuming it's Hillary or Biden, whomever. At least with them, they want to wreck the country in like 100 different ways. But the number one item isn't flood it with the third world so that Republicans can never win another national election. That's item number one on the agenda of Rubio and Jeb.
Right, they're both aggressively open borders.
Yeah.
And with Bush, you're not even guaranteed good Supreme Court appointments.
Right.
So if you're going to get Supreme Court appointments that go south anyway, then what's the point?
And even if he gives you the good Supreme Court opinions, if we have open borders, Republicans are never winning another presidential election. Within 10 years, it's all Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, and we just lose across the border. Who votes in America determines everything. When you think of everything bad, and a lot of bad things have happened in the last 7 years, from the Iran deal to losing a wonderful victory in Iraq, Obamacare, these Planned Parenthood videos, whatever you present to me, none of this would have happened without Teddy Kennedy's 1965 Immigration Act, because it's the post-1970 immigrants that made Obama's election possible.
Sure.
He would never have been elected in the country that elected Ronald Reagan. I was seeing something about Walter Mondale on TV the other night. We all have kind of warm feelings, he was always a good loser. Well, in today's country, he'd be the president.
That's right.
In today's country, Jimmy Carter would have had 2 terms. Nothing else matters but who gets to vote. And Republicans and these libertarians and businessmen, what do you think the regulatory climate will be like under a country run by AFSCME?
Well, California went from being Reagan country to Villaraigosa country.
That's right.
And if you look at the map, you look at places like North Dakota, South Dakota, all it takes is 100,000 people,
Yep.
200,000 people, before all of these reliably red states suddenly become California or New Mexico or even Nevada?
No, immigrants are second only to African Americans in the extent to which they block vote for the Democrats. With African Americans, it's about 90%. With the first black president, it got higher than that. With post-1970 immigrants, they are voting 80% for the Democrats. So, and these aren't people, I mean, how do you win with a populace like this? This idea, oh, we need to reach it, we need more outreach to these communities. No, it has nothing to do with outreach. This is ethnic tribal voting. You tell them what the symbol is. It doesn't matter if they agree with Republicans on abortion, and they don't agree as much as we're always told anyway. It doesn't matter if they agree with Republicans on gay marriage. And again, not that big an issue for them. Poor immigrants want big government, but the main thing is they just show me what symbol I vote for. And before the first ballot is cast, the Democrats already have, what, about 30, 40% of the vote. We are fighting over 10, 15% of independent white voters. That's what the fight is about.
And that's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
All right, so you got into a little bit of a tiff with Fox News, Bill O'Reilly, after he was involved in a debate on a show about the 14th Amendment, and you went after some of the legal analysts on Fox. What's the status of that feud?
He's still wrong. And as I said live on air on Megyn's show one night, look, O'Reilly has been fantastic on immigration. He's been fantastic on the child rape cases. The very first copy of my book I got, my copy, the one copy, I gave to him because I thought he would like this book, and he won't put me on for this book. I can't understand it. I keep begging why aren't you putting me on? He keeps talking about it, and he keeps getting the law completely wrong, completely, absolutely wrong. So one night, actually here in LA, I was sitting in the makeup chair listening to his show before I went on to date Megyn, and he's talking about this Kate's Law, which I guess he's been pushing, Kate's Law, for Kate Steinle, murdered by an illegal immigrant up in San Francisco. And his big thing is inviting people on the program because we want a 5-year felony if you are an illegal immigrant and commit a felony in this country. So I went on Megyn's show and said, you know, some of your hosts are promoting this idea. It's already on the books. It's a 20-year felony. If only there was someone with a best-selling book out there he could interview on the topic. But no, he'll bring in homeless people to talk about immigration law before he'll bring me on, which is why they have... I don't know. I'm sorry, they should have remembered the Civil War. That was a big part of our history. It wasn't that long ago. You should remember we fought a civil war to give slaves freedom, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were about free slaves. It wasn't a trapdoor so that 100 years hence, La Raza could rush an illegal immigrants across the border, have her drop a baby, and ha-ha, you can't deport me. That is not the purpose of the 14th Amendment. So this was the point I was making in a couple of columns.
When do you think you'll be back on the show?
I think it'll be a long vacation. But I'm thinking PJTV is going to pick up in the ratings, since this is the only place you can hear what the law actually is and not fantasies about immigration.
Ann Coulter, thanks so much for coming in. Always a pleasure. The book is Adios America, available online at Amazon.com. #2 New York Times bestseller. This is what, number 11?
Yes, it is.
There you go, number 11. You can also follow Ann on Twitter at Ann Coulter. You can follow PJTV on Twitter at PJTV and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/PJTV. Thanks so much for watching.